Hello, everyone. I know that this is a difficult day for the United States. I know I'm going to get more responses like, don't bother us, we have our own problems, since the US government shutdown has begun yesterday. And trust me, I am aware because I live here too. However, that doesn't change the fact that I am a first generation Ukrainian American. My parents still live in Ukraine. I can't get them out, and the war is still going on. I want to start with this piece. This is from Reuters, talking about Ukraine's frontline cities, and that includes my native city of Zaporizhia, although it is not quite as close to the front line as some of the other ones, but they're close enough because they can hear the artillery from the front line that goes through the Zaporizhia region, not district, region. And some of the shit fired from the front line does reach Zaporizhia and causes a lot of destruction, not to mention injuries as well as death. Why is this important? Well, because Russia continues targeting civilians and continues denying it, because every time they destroy another school, another kindergarten, another maternity ward, another hospital, another apartment building, they just say we have achieved all of the military goals in this attack. That is a lie. They are achieving some goals. They are achieving the goal of terrorizing Ukrainian civilians, but there's nothing military to do with this. So the mood in these cities is that of part constant strain, stress, and terror. This is something I know personally from my parents. And that of defiance. These people are prepared to fight. If they can get out, for example, their elderly, their children, if they can get them out of there safely, they will. But a lot of people are prepared to fight. My parents are in their late 70s, and they are prepared to fight. My stepmom, who is this little fragile woman with a kind of a very small little girl voice, said that if any Russians come barging into the house, she will fight them with a cast iron frying pan if she has to. And I think that describes the mood in a lot of Ukraine's city as the front line keeps moving toward them. Part of this defiance is this type of incident that has been happening all around both the invaded areas and pre-front areas where pro-Russian officials have been attempting to grab power. Some time ago, a few weeks ago, I've posted a summary of the history of Ukrainian resistance through the course of this war. And this is something that is not covered a whole lot. Now, this particular instance is somewhat different because in this case, this guy was killed during a drone attack. So this wasn't a particular act of sabotage. It wasn't a planned assassination. He just ended up in the wrong place and the wrong time. But you know what? I don't think anybody's gonna mourn him because this man was a traitor. He had sold out his place, his town, his region to the invading army. And this also, again, goes against the narrative that Russians are pushing, saying that this whole thing is to protect Russian nationals in Ukraine and Russian speakers in Ukraine. As somebody who comes from the Russian-speaking family in Ukraine, I can address the Russian-speaking thing and tell honestly that that is bullshit. They're not protecting anybody. But also, this guy flipped. He was their supporter, and he died in a drone attack. They're not protecting anybody. This is a developing story. So we have another oil refinery fire. This is in Yaroslavl. This is another big one. At this time, they're describing it as a man-made incident that is not connected to any drone attacks. But you know what? Fine. Here's the thing, and I mentioned this before. I mentioned this in the past. In a lot of cases, when Ukrainians do carry out a directed strike using drones against oil refineries deep inside Russia, they're aided by Russia's sloppiness in how they do business. This is another thing I've mentioned in the past, is that Russian industry is laced with habits left over from the Soviet Union: bribery, extortion, embezzlement, theft of parts, supplies, all kinds of materials, etc., etc. And so, when an emergency occurs, all of this has a cumulative effect of causing more destruction than would have taken place had they had their shit together. You know, leaky valves, loose pipes, rusty joints, sloppy safety and maintenance protocols, bribes delivered to obtain safety certificates and certificates of operation, things like that. None of that helps. And I think this is one of those cases where somebody was sloppy again working at an oil refinery, which is a big no-no. And the fire erupted. Fine. You know what? I'm sure people in Ukraine will take help wherever they can, including the unwitting help of sloppy Russian workers. Now, here's an industrial incident we do not want to see. So, there was a Russian attack in a town near Chernobyl nuclear power plant, thanks to which the power plant lost power. The attack was against the town of Slavutich. This is in the Kiev region. And that is a problem. I can't describe you every single aspect of why this is a problem. What I suggest is that you go and look up Chernobyl disaster in April of 1986. I was growing up in Ukraine at the time, and like so many people, due to the government cover-up that was back during the Soviet Union times, due to the government cover-up, was exposed to some non-lethal but harmful Chernobyl fallout. Would not recommend. Russia continues playing with fire as it continues to target Ukraine's nuclear power plant, including this one. Among other things, let's not forget the key structure that isolates the destroyed fourth reactor, that's the one that was destroyed in that disaster, and prevents the release of radioactive materials into the environment, was left without electricity. Do I need to explain to anybody why this is dangerous? And remember, radioactive fallout doesn't know any borders and doesn't care who is NATO member or EU member. Just a thought. More to come.